Hello guys, Bomberstyle here. We are finally done with our Metahuman customization process, and now it's time to give our Metahuman some cool outfit. In this tutorial, I will show you how to set up your assets for Marvelous Designer. In Marvelous Designer, we will design Bomberstyle jacket. Same as we did with Metahumans, we will have high poly and low poly versions. We will use high poly mesh to bake details to our low poly mesh, and then we can texture it in Substance Painter. To be able to use outfit with animations, we will go over rigging and weight painting. For pants and boots, I will use existing Metahuman meshes, cause I just want to show you how you can use existing meshes and adjust it to use with your custom Metahuman. I hope you're excited to create your own custom Metahuman outfit, and let's jump into it. Before we start to work on our Metahuman clothes in Marvelous Designer, we need to set up our project in Blender. Let's start first by exporting our face and body meshes. In export setting, deselect LODs since we don't need them. In export setting, deselect LODs since we don't need them. Now let's import both meshes into Blender. Move both meshes to a new collection and name it CV Scan. Duplicate the collection and name it CV Avatar. In CV Avatar, again remove the skeleton as we will only be using the mesh. Join the head and the body together and rescale mesh from 1 to 0.001. Now we can export our avatar as OBJ. Make sure Limit to Selection Only is selected. Now open Marvelous Designer and drag and drop Avatar into the 3D viewport. Make sure that Automatically Add Argument Points is selected and the scale is set to meters. Select Align Bottom to Ground. Now let's go to the Metahuman Creator. Duplicate our Viking base project and open it up. Give it a name. I will name mine vCloud Temp. Now we can go to the body selection and select the clothes we want to use. Then we can exit Metahuman Creator and go to our Unreal Engine project. Let's go to the window, Quixel Bridge, and download new Metahuman. Once the download is done, let's import our mesh into the project. Open vCloud Temp Blueprint and let's find and export cargo pants. Uncheck vertex colors and level of detail since we don't need them. Then we can go back to our Blender project and import pants into the Blender. Now we will fix the pant clipping issue by using the Sculpt tool. Select pants and switch to the Sculpt mode. By using the draw brush, go over the areas where the legs are clipping through the pants. Now switch back to the object mode and duplicate pants. Remove skeleton from the duplicate pants and rescale them to 0.001. Select mesh and export as OBJ. So we are done with the basic setup, and now it's time to design our jacket in Marvelous Designer. If this is your first time using Marvelous Designer, don't worry, I'm gonna go over all the process. I'm gonna show you how you can do the same things in a different way so you are able to create your own outfit in the future. In Marvelous Designer, while holding the right mouse click, you can rotate the viewport. While holding the middle mouse click, you can move the viewport around. Make sure that your gizmo is set to the world coordinate, since it will make your work in the viewport easier. As a starting point, we will use t-shirt garment. It's a good starting point when you're designing your first outfit. Later on, you will be able to create your own template library. Drag and drop t-shirt into the 3D viewport. Adjust the t-shirt location to match the body and press Simulate. While simulation is active, we can drag the outfit to fix any cloth clipping. For a better fit, we will increase shoulder width. Click on Edit Pattern. Then we can select front and while holding shift, select back shoulder points. As mirror editing is enabled for the left and the right side, we can just select left side and it will automatically mirror changes to the right side. Let's just drag it slightly, then press Simulate again. Now select the middle point for the left sleeve and delete it. Now we'll increase the sleeve length by dragging the bottom line. To get a better fit, we will right-click and choose Reset 3D Argument. Now adjust the sleeve to better fit your arm and repeat the same thing for the other arm. Then we can resimulate. I will shorten it since I want to add ribbing. For that we will create a rectangle. Make it slightly shorter than the rest of the arm. To make it fit your arm, let's enable Show Arrangement Points. Then click on the arrangement point that are the closest to the place where you want to place your ribbing. Now let's copy ribbing and choose Mirror Paste. Mirror Paste will enable mirror editing. Now, before we press Simulate, we need to sew things together. Select Rigging, then select Segment Sewing. First sew itself together by clicking on the right side and then on the left side. Then sew ribbing to the rest of the sleeve. Make sure that the sewing direction matches. Now repeat the same process for the other side. Then we can simulate again. Now we will create ribbing for the bottom of the jacket. This time, instead of creating a rectangle, we will create an internal line. Let's select Edit Pattern, then while holding Shift, select either of the bottom lines for the front and the back. Right-click and choose Offset as internal line. Here we can see the internal line. We can set its height by changing the distance. I will set mine to 50 millimeters. Now while holding Shift, select either of the offset lines for the front and the back. Right-click and choose Cut and Sew. It will separate and sew ribbon from the rest of the body. Now select one of the middle sides of the front ribbon and choose Offset as internal line again, then Cut and Sew. Now we will merge ribbon parts to make it easier to work with. Select Edit Pattern to the back ribbon, select both inside lines and choose Merge. Now we will merge the rest of the bottom ribbon parts. I will shorten the ribbon to make it tighter than the rest of the jacket. Now we will create a color for our jacket. Select Rectangle tool and right-click into the viewport to open the rectangle creation menu. I will set the width to the 100, but for the height we need to do some calculations. Get the length of the one side of the front color and one side of the back color. Calculate the sum of these values together. Mine is 244.9. Actually, numbers need to be inverted. Then we can press OK. Select Edit Pattern, select Side Edge, right-click and choose Unfold Symmetric Editing with the sewing. I will make the width a bit smaller. And we will enable arrangement points once again. Now select Free Sewing and sew the collar to the rest of the jacket. Start first with the jacket neck, then sew it to the collar, and this will give you the right sewing length at the collar part. Here is where it's important to have the right sewing direction. It can take multiple tries to get it right. Now select Color, right-click and disable Link Editing. Then select Internal Polygon Line. For a better fit, we need to angle our collar. We will make a V-shaped internal polygon in the middle of our collar. Then right-click and choose Cut. We can delete the middle part. To join them together, we first need to sew them, so let's do that. Select both inside lines and choose Merge. Then select Smooth Curve and we will smooth out any sharp edges at the middle of the collar. And delete the sewing at the front of the jacket to open it up. And delete sewing also for the ribbon. Now we will create another internal shape. Then, in the 3D viewport, select Fold Arrangement. Click on the internal shape and rotate the collar fold. Now we will add a front zipper. In the 3D viewport, select Zipper and draw zipper lines. First on one side and then another side. press Simulate. Then disable simulation, select and drag the zipper to open up the jacket. Then simulate again. Now to improve simulation quality, we need to apply fabric materials to our jacket. While you're still gonna do actual texturing inside Substance Painter, it's recommended to apply materials inside Marvel's Designer, since during the simulation process, clothing material and weight plays a huge role in how the jacket will look. In Favorites, select Fabric. Then let's search for the leather lambskin and drag and drop it into the fabric section. Then select the whole garment and click Apply button. Then let's search for the King Pond jersey. Select all ribbon parts and apply. Our right arm is a cyber arm that I would like to show, so I will pull up the sleeve. From now on, you can add to your jacket as many or as few details as you want. The rest of the jacket creation process follows the same workflow. With just adding internal shapes and using cut and saw, you can add a lot of interesting details to your jacket, like shoulders that are using different material or even cyber detail. Have a fun creating here. We can use internal shapes to create pockets. Select internal rectangle and draw a pocket shape. You can use Shape Editor to make unique form. Right-click and choose Clone a Shape. To make a pocket hole for a zipper, make an internal rectangle inside the cloned shape. Right-click and choose Convert to Hole. Make a zipper and then sew the cloned shape to the internal shape. At this point, if needed, you can also remove the linked editing if you want to add specific detail only to one side of the jacket. In my case, I want left pocket to look different from the right pocket. The last thing we will make is a t-shirt under our jacket. To minimize cloth clipping, Marvelous Designer uses layer hierarchy to identify which garment should be on top of which. It's a useful feature not only when you need to layer clothes, but also it's a good practice to give higher layer numbers that are on the top of the base clothing. Let's select all the jacket pieces and deselect the pocket as we want to give it a higher layer number than the rest of the jacket. Then in Property Editor, find Simulation Properties, Layer. Set layer number from 0 to 1. Then select Pocket and set layer number to 2. Now go back to the garment section and drag and drop the t-shirt into the 2D window. A new window will pop up. Be sure to choose Add instead of Open. Selecting Open will remove everything and start a new project, which is something we don't want to do. Once again, adjust the t-shirt to fit our body, then press Simulate. As a t-shirt has a lower layer number, Marvel's Designer immediately puts it under the jacket. In 2D window, select Jacket, right-click and choose Hide 3D Pattern. This will make it easier to fix your t-shirt. For our t-shirt, we can merge both front parts and both back parts. Now we can select Jacket and choose Saw 3D Pattern. I see that the t-shirt is sticking out of the jacket, so I will shorten it. The last thing we need to do is find our exported cargo pant OBJ file and drag and drop it into the 3D window. Make sure to change the load type from Open to Add, otherwise it will override the project. You can ignore the error window. If we would not import pants into Marvel's Designer, we can see that later in Unreal Engine we would have overlapping issues. Press Simulate and adjust the jacket where needed. I'm happy with the results. So once our outfit is done, we are ready to export our Highpoly version to the Blender. Before we do this, first we need to organize our UV layout. Later you can also organize your layout inside Blender. I prefer Marvel's Designer for that and use Blender only in cases when I need to combine Marvel's Designer clothing pieces with pieces modeled inside Blender. As we won't be doing this, I will stick with the Marvel's Designer. It's very easy to do. Let's switch from the 2D window to the UV editor window. Now we just need to organize our garments into the UV. To increase texture resolution of our mesh, I will split our mesh in 4 UDIM tiles. Start by grouping parts together. At this point, don't scale anything. Each UDIM tile acts as a separate 4K texture, but with the power of the virtual textures in Unreal Engine, it will be used as a single texture. Traditionally, we would either need to make 4 different 4K textures, therefore increasing draw calls, or using 16K texture to achieve the same texture quality. Then select each of the groups, make a right click and choose Fit UV to 0 to 1. Then arrange each group to its separate UV tile. Now switch back to the 2D window. Select all garment parts and in Property Editor, under Simulation Properties, change particle distance. Depending on the complexity and your PC specifications, you can lower the number. Remember, the lower the number, the higher detailed your Highpoly outfit will be. Resimulate and then let's export our outfit. Select all, then go to File, Export, OBJ selected. Select Single Object, Weld Thin. Enable Unified UV Coordinates. Set image size to 4K. Then press OK. Now we can import Jacket into the Blender project. Since I want to use my jacket in a game project, I need to retopologize it. I will use Marvel's Designer built-in Retopology tool, but you are free to use any workflow or any tool to retopologize your mesh. If we look at the jacket that we extracted from the Marvel's Designer, topology in some areas are way too dense. If you're not planning to use this character for games where optimization is crucial, we could still call this jacket acceptable. The bigger problem is that our mesh consists of triangles instead of quads. While you can convert and export the mesh as a quad mesh from the Marvel's Designer, topology still will be messy and can create issues when you're using modifiers, or even trying to rig and animate your mesh. Topology can solve all these problems and many more. Retopology in Marvel's Designer is a relatively easy process and doesn't take that much time once you have done it a few times. Before you start, I strongly recommend making a copy of your project and use that for retopology. It will also help us later since we will need to readjust UV for the new mesh. In our Marvel's Designer project, let's go to Topology Tools. You will be using Create Topology and Patch Topology. With Create Topology, you can draw each quad manually, while Patch will create a bigger section of quads. There are a few important aspects that you will need to keep in mind when topologizing. You want to use quads when retopology your mesh. It makes working with the mesh way easier, and things like modifiers work way better on quad mesh. There can be places where you can only use triangles and it's totally fine, since hardware reads quads as triangles anyways. Opposite edge vertex count need to match. The vertex count need to match along suit edges. Luckily, in places where you create new vertices, Marvel's Designer creates ghost points that help match quads between two suit sides. Start with bigger quads as it will be easier to count vertex amount for edges. We can subdivide quads later to make more detailed mesh. Don't worry that retopology in curved areas, like neck and underarms, don't fit in the beginning. This will be fixed once we will subdivide our mesh. When you retopology your mesh, there will be a few details that will be missing compared to the Highpoly mesh. For example, the zipper. My preferred workaround is creating a new rectangle, where the original zipper was and side together. We can paint the zipper later in the Substance Painter. Once you are done retopologizing your mesh, right-click and choose Add All Divisions to subdivide your retopology. You can subdivide even further if you want to get even more detailed low-poly mesh, but be careful since it can lead to the vertex overlap and you will get an error. As we made a duplicate of our project, we can right-click again and I will choose Remesh All Replace. It will replace the original mesh with the new one. Then, as we did before, we need to adjust UVs. By the way, don't worry if you have some clipping issues, since we can fix them later in Blender. Here, the most important thing is not to click Simulate, as the new mesh parts are not sewed together. Pieces will just fall. Now we can export our mesh. Select All, then go to File, Export, OBJ selected. Select Single Object, Weld Thin, enable Unified UV Coordinates, set image size to 4K, press OK. Now we are all set to import our jacket into the Blender project. So now we have our high poly and low poly version of our mesh. It's time to do some tweaks and prepare it for the Substance Painter. Before we are ready to move forward with Substance Painter, there are a few fixes and improvements that are needed for our mesh. Let's first start with our high poly mesh. We will start by separating the zipper parts from the rest of the mesh. The easiest way to do this is by using material selection. Go through every material and press select. Then select all zipper parts by inverting selection and separate them from rest of the mesh. And then we will add subdivision modifier to smooth out our mesh. Now we can go to our low poly mesh. Let's separate the t-shirt from the rest of the jacket for now. Let's clean our mesh by joining double vertices. Go to Select, All by Traits, Non-Manifold. Then go to Mesh, Cleanup, March by Distance. Now we will use non-manifold selection to find any place where vertices have not aligned properly. Then using magnetic snipping tool, we will snap vertices together. Then once again select non-manifold vertices and march them by distance. Perfect, now we only have non-manifold edges. Now let's unhide t-shirt and set color to random. Now select the t-shirt and by using the sculpt tool, fix the parts where the t-shirt is clipping through the jacket. Then we can join the t-shirt and the jacket back together. To smooth out the jacket, we will add two modifiers. Solidify to add the thickness to our mesh. Make sure to select only rim and set thickness to a very low number. The subdivision surface will subdivide our mesh and make it a bit smoother. Apply both modifiers. The next step is optional, but there is a great modifier that decreases the detail of your model, which can be very helpful to optimize things that don't need such a high detail. The zipper is very small detail that doesn't need to be very detailed in the most situations. I will add decimate modifier and bring ratio to as low as possible before it starts removing too much detail and breaks the mesh. I will set my ratio to 0.5. Now apply the modifier. Now we can join the jacket and zippers together. Adjust the zipper's position in editor mode if needed. As I want to use only one material for my jacket, I will use vertex colors to mark different parts of the jacket for easier texture painting in Substance Painter. Let's go to edit mode. Make sure you are in face selection mode. Then using material, make a selection. Then switch to the vertex paint. Choose a color. Enable face selection. Then go to paint, set vertex color. Now we can see the vertex color is applied to our jacket. In viewport shading, we can set color to the attribute to see vertex colors. Now just repeat the process for the rest of the jacket parts. After we are done, we can remove all materials and create a new one. The last thing before we can export our mesh into the Substance Painter is we need to fix the UV layout for the zipper. Switch to the UV editing. Then select all zipper parts by inverting selection and choose Smart UV Project. Then make necessary adjustments. Now you can export both meshes as FBX. In the export settings, select Limited to Selected Objects. In the object type, select Unmesh. Then scroll down and deselect Add Leaf Bones and Bake Animations. Now press Export FBX. So now it's time to texture our jacket. As before, I can use Substance Painter, but you're free to use any other software if you want to. Let's start by setting up our project. Select Low Poly Mesh. As your template, set Unreal Engine 4 and change document resolution to 4K. To make our Low Poly Mesh look like High Poly Mesh, let's bake mesh maps. In Texture Set Settings, scroll down and click on Bake Mesh Maps. Find your High Poly Mesh and deselect ID and Positions for now. Change output size and play around with the front and rear distances. Press Bake. Now we need to bake vertex colors. Go back to baking and deselect everything. Select ID. In ID, change the color source from material color to the vertex color. Remove High Poly Mesh from the window and find your Low Poly Mesh. Change the distance if needed and press Bake. After the baking is done, we can see the true power of baking High Poly Mesh to the Low Poly Mesh. We are getting all High Poly Mesh details while keeping quite low poly count. As we created only one-sided mesh, currently our inside and part of our color are transparent. We will fix this later in Unreal by enabling double-sided material. If you want to see the same effect in Substance Painter, go to Shader Settings and set shader to PBR Metal Rough with Alpha Test. That will enable double-sided material. Let's create a jacket folder. Add base color fill layer and pick a color. I will leave only color and roughness. Then add another fill layer, add a white mask to it. Then add fill the mask. In grayscale, find messy fibers too. Then we will tweak the parameters to get some interesting pattern. Set the color for the second fill layer. Then we can add another fill layer with a fill white mask. In grayscale, search for Pure 1. Then play again with the parameters and color to get an interesting pattern. Now we'll finish our jacket by using starter smart materials. Let's start with the cyber detail. Find aluminum material and add color pick mask to it. Select cyber detail. Now in the color texture settings, under channels, click plus icon and select emissive color channel. Now we have emissive color option. Set emissive color. In shader settings, you can adjust emissive color visibility. Slider don't have any effect to actual emissive color intensity. We will control that later inside Unreal Engine. Adjust height to give cyber detail some depth. Now we will create a ribbon folder. For ribbon, I will use Woodland Dirty material. Again, add color pick masks to it. In Materia Fabric layer, I will remove pattern image, as I just want to use texture of this smart material. Now by using other smart materials, finish your jacket. The last thing I want to show you before we are completing this section is how to paint a zipper. It's one of these details that you don't need to model in 3D software. Find any metal smart material. In my case, I will use aluminum. Add a black mask with the paint. For the central zipper, I usually like to enable 2D window as well, since it makes easier to draw a zipper across a long piece. Then in brush selection, select zipper. I will scale my brush to 2.5. Then in 2D window, just click on top and then while holding shift, click on the bottom to draw a straight line. Now we just need to adjust the height. And we have a realistic looking zipper. You can make different variations of your jacket. Once you are done, you can export your jacket as 4K texture. We have made high poly and low poly versions of our jacket, we have textured it, and now we are ready probably for the most trickiest process in the whole custom Metahuman process. Rigging and weight painting. We need to go through this process so we are able to play animations or use control rig with our jacket. Let's hide the avatar since we don't need it anymore, and unhide the skinning mesh. You can hide the face skeleton for now. Let's select the jacket and while holding shift select the body skeleton. Then go to Object, Parent with empty groups. Now, if we select the jacket and go to Object Data Properties, we can see that all the body vertex groups are copied to the jacket. Now go to Modifier Properties and add Data Transfer Properties. Join the head and the body meshes together by pressing Ctrl J. And set the joint meshes as source. Turn on Vertex Data, select vertex groups and press Generate Data Layers. Then apply Modifier. Now if we switch to the weight paint mode by clicking on the vertex groups, we can see that we have successfully copied our body weights to the jacket, but the results are far from perfect. Copying weights from the body mesh speeds up the rigging, but it also brings issues in places where your clothes will stretch, like underarms or the crotch area. So before we are fixing it, it's worth to mention that even in the AAA games or movies that are using some CGI characters, there is weird stretching. If you're really gonna look closely, you're gonna see there are weird stretchings and it's almost impossible to fully avoid them. So here, the most important thing is so your character looks good in most of the time. When it's like idling, running, doing basic stuff, if it looks good, it's good enough. So even if you're checking the original Metahuman clothing, if you put it in a split, you can see there is a weird stretching in the crotch area. And so if you're not planning that your character is gonna sit in a split the whole game, then it really doesn't matter. Because you're not gonna see this weird stretching in running, jumping animations and stuff like that. If in some fighting scenes, if you have some fighting scenes and there's weird stretching, you can always fix it later. Because what I suggest you to do is just do basic fixing right now, then you can take the jacket in Unreal Engine, play your animations and see if you see anything weird there. If nothing, all good. If there's some weirdness there, you can always go back to Blender, keep adjusting your weight painting and then put it back in the Unreal Engine. We will start by smoothing the weight gradient. Let's go to weight paint mode, then click weights, smooth. A new window will open. Set sub C to all groups. Then adjust the numbers down below. As numbers are mesh specific, your numbers will be different from mine. Experiment and find what gives cleaner results. Now the underarm area looks way better, but we can still improve results, especially in the shoulder area. By going through the vertex groups, Find painted weights that impact the specific area. Then use the difference brush. Be patient and experiment. This is probably the most tiresome process in the whole Metahuman creation process. Once you're happy with the results, we can go back to object mode. Make sure the body skeleton is named root without any number. Select the skeleton and while holding shift select the jacket. Then go to File, Export, FBX. Select Limit to Selected Objects, Object Type, Armature and Mesh. Uncheck Add Leaf Bones and Bake Animations. Then let's find our cargo pants. Make sure that the root name is root without any numbers. Then select Skeleton and while holding shift select Pant Mesh. Then go to File, Export, FBX. Select Limit to Selected Objects, Object Type, Armature and Mesh. Uncheck Add Leaf Bones and Bake Animation. So now we are finally ready for Unreal Engine. We can grab all our assets and import them into the Unreal Engine. Let's start by importing our Cyber Jacket. In the import window, set Skeleton as Metahuman based skeleton. We can delete imported materials as we will make our own material structure. Let's create a new material. This will be our outfit master material. Then in the texture folder, let's import our Cyber Jacket textures. Open one of the textures and make sure that you see all UDIM tiles. If you can see only single texture, go to Project Settings and search for Virtual Texture. Make sure Virtual Texture support is enabled. Restart engine if necessary. Grab all textures and drag them into the master material. For the base color, we need to create a multiplier node with a color brightness parameter. Plug it into the base color. For ORM, we need two multiply nodes. For the green channel, multiply node with the roughness intensity that goes into the roughness. And for the blue channel, multiply node with the metallic intensity that goes into the metallic. For emissive, we do the same as we did for the skin. While holding number 4, create the color parameter for emissive color. Multiply it with RGB. Then we will multiply it with emissive intensity that will plug into the emissive color. For normal, we will create a flatten normal node. For flatness, we will make a normal flatness parameter. Plug it into the normal. Flatten normal gives an option to increase or decrease the normal map detail. You can set default value to 1 except for normal. Leave that at 0. Convert all textures into parameters and give the names accordingly. Now we can right-click on Master Material and create a child material for our jacket. Now open Jacket and assign child material. Let's open Cyber Viking Blueprint and assign Jacket to the torso slot. Then, let's select feet and replace our flip-flops with boots that we downloaded from Metahuman Creator. You can change the boot color if you like. Find the cargo pants that we downloaded from the Metahuman creator and make a copy and open. Then press Reimport Mesh and find the cargo pants that we exported from Blender. A material conflict window will appear on the right side. Right-click and select Lambert 1. Now we can assign the cargo pants to the leg slot. Before you get too excited, well, it looks we are done with this course, there is one more thing we need to do. If we import our Metahuman into the scene and put it into Sequencer, you will notice there are some clipping issues. While we did everything right during our custom Metahuman pipeline, Metahuman uses the post-process animation blueprint that corrects deformations to achieve more realistic look. While we copied exact weights and this issue shouldn't occur, it does. And currently there are two fixes. Either you can use the sculpt tool and increase the distance between the body mesh and the outfit in problem areas, or you can use more flexible approach by masking out the body parts when they are under the cloth. I'm choosing to use this approach. There are multiple ways how you can create masks, and it really comes down to individual preference. I usually use vertex color for that, similar how we mask jacket pieces for coloring. Open Blender file where you have your low poly mesh that you used for Substance Painter. Make a copy of it. Then go to Vertex Paint. Set color to the pure black. Click Paint, set Vertex Colors. Then go to Edit mode. Set selection to face selection and select faces you want to be visible. You can import your jacket to see how much you need to mask your arm. Then with selection active, go back to the Vertex Paint. Make sure face selection is active. Set color to white. Then click Paint, set Vertex Colors. Now export your mesh as FBX. Now import your mesh in Substance Painter. Same way how you did for your jacket, we will bake ID mask. In Texture Set Settings, scroll down and click on Bake Mesh Maps. Select ID. In ID, change the color source from material color to the vertex color. Find your low poly mesh. Set distance to low number like 0.001. Once baking is done, find ID mask in your project folder. Make a right click and choose Export Resource. Now we can import body mask into the Unreal Engine. Open Master Material and change Blend Mode to Masks. Drag texture into Material. To be able to turn and off mask, let's search for the Boolean parameter. Then search for switch. Set Boolean as value and plug texture mask as true. Plug it into the opacity mask. Now you can enable and disable mask. We have successfully fixed the clipping issue. So this is it, guys. We have created our own custom Metahuman that has a custom grooming and has a pretty cool outfit. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial series. If you did, please check my Patreon and YouTube membership how you can support the channel so I can make these kind of cool tutorials in the future. You can always like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!